Esto es Backstage Pacifico, un podcast orientado a inversionistas sofisticados, family offices, individuos de alto patrimonio y gente curiosa interesada en profundizar sus conocimientos en el mercado financiero global y en especial el latinoamericano. Nuestro propósito es contribuir a posicionar a Latinoamérica como un jugador relevante de los mercados financieros globales. De los creadores de Pacífico Research, un departamento de estudios independiente, de análisis macroeconómico, financiero y político para Latinoamérica, con un enfoque quantamental que combina el análisis cuantitativo con el análisis fundamental y contribuye a distintas entidades financieras a tener una mejor comprensión de los riesgos y oportunidades de mercado.
So I think providing information and full transparency, it's just something I couldn't encourage more.
And currently the discussion is run by ideology, but we are thinking less on the investment aspects of the problem.
Life cycle investing works exactly like a Chilean pension system, except that the implementation is done a bit more automatically.
So if you have much more time to recover, then you shouldn't care much about the drawdown. But when you're about to retire, then you should be optimizing an objective function that would limit the drawdown as far as we can.
So the fund, a cohort fund, and the specialist will reinvest according to the age of the cohort.
Investment itself probably should be left with investment professionals if it's probably best done that way.
Hi everyone, welcome to Pacífico Backstage. I am Mauricio Carrasco, your host and senior economist at Pacífico Research. Today we have a very special episode since we have an international guest, and that's why we are having this conversation in English. We'll be talking about the pension system, which is a very hot topic right now in Chile. For those who don't fully follow what is happening right now in Chile, let me tell you that we have been discussing a reform for the pension system in the last couple of years. And that's why we thought this was the perfect timing to contribute to our discussion with an episode like this. We will be covering a couple of issues about the pension system, but our main focus will be on what we think is the crucial point. And also, I would say, is one of the missing points in our current discussion, which is investment. I'm excited to have three great guests joining me today. On the Pacífico side, I will join by Enrico Vicentini, CEO and co-founder of Pacífico Research. Hey, Enrico, how are you?
Hi, Mauricio. Thanks for having me again here.
Great. And Igal Magendzo will also be joining us. He is chief economist and co-founder of Pacífico Research. Igal, how are you doing?
Hi, Mauricio. Very fine, very excited to be here and looking forward for this great conversation with our star guest.
Nice. And finally, it's an honor to introduce this tremendous investment expert and a close friend of Pacífico Research, Dra Joo Hee Lee. But before I say hi to Joo Hee, let me tell you about her background. Joo Hee is an investment specialist with decades of experience in managing multi-asset investment solutions. Having recently left full-time portfolio and team leadership at Newton Investment Management, she continues to be a board member of Taina Technology, an AI-driven fintech company, and lecturer of quantitative finance at the University of Cambridge. That's impressive, but that's not all. Joo Hee's roles in the city as a leader of investment solutions design have been global and multi-asset in nature, providing asset owners, especially pension funds, with innovative and bespoke solutions. And if that were not enough, she obtained a PhD in chemical physics from the University of Cambridge, where she later held a research fellowship. Following a mid-career transition to the finance industry, she earned CFA and CQF, and subsequently acquired a second master's degree in applied statistics and operational research from Birkbeck College. Finally, she has presented at the World Pension Summit and also participated in a seminar on optimizing investment in the pension system Chile in 2015. I told you this was a special episode. Hi, Joo Hee. It's a privilege to have you here. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a great honor. And as you said, I was in Chile just under 10 years ago for the same topic, which is just amazing that we are having this conversation today. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for your time. Yuhi, we always like to start with a question to break the ice and get to know our guests a bit better. Could you share with us a bit about your journey and what initially sparked your interest in these topics? Additionally, we're curious about your current agenda. What are you working on today?
Working backwards, right now, I'm trying to use my experience and skills to educate the next generation of investment professionals. That's why I teach at Cambridge. And also, I try to help startup companies, and especially those companies run by my friends. So I'm trying to help some investment tool development for one of my friends' companies, and then lead some research for some other companies. So these are the things that I'm spending my time on. And for teaching, I actually wrote a lot of notes, and then I'm actually transferring that notes to book. Again, helping next generation of investors to learn a bit more quickly. And last year, in order for me to do all these things, last year I decided 25 years of investment career has been enough, and then just move the transition.
That's really great. Let us get straight to the point. Probably not everyone knows how the Chilean pension system works or the main aspect of the current reform that we're discussing here in Chile, right? Igal, could you give us a brief context on this?
Sure. Let me make a brief wrap of the main features of the Chilean pension system. The main component and the one that makes the Chilean system famous worldwide are the individual capitalization account. In Chile, each worker contributes 10% of their pre-tax salary to a personal account managed by private pension fund administrator, the AFPs, that are single-purpose institutions. This account also includes contributions for disability and survivorship insurance that I'm not going to enter. Contributors can choose from different types of funds, labeled A through E, ranging from higher risk, mostly equity, to lower risk, mostly bond. Younger workers are advised to choose higher risk funds, while those nearing retirement should opt for lower risk options, but they are free to choose whatever they feel best. If you want to save more than what is mandatory, there are a few voluntary mechanisms with some tax incentives, and there is some people who actually use it. There are currently 7 AFPs, these pension fund administrators, that manage the individual account, investing the funds in various financial instruments that are supervised, and there are limits that are mandated by law. The multiple AFPs compete, but returns tend to be very similar because the average of the system functions as a benchmark. Also, if they compete on fees, but the fees have remained relatively sticky and high because clients are not very sensitive to changes in fees. An auction system for new contributors was introduced some years ago, and that helped reduce the fees somewhat. The standard retirement age in Chile is 65 for men and 60 for women. The amount of the pension is influenced by the number of years you've contributed, how much you've contributed, and the performance of your investment. To receive your pension, you can buy an annuity from an insurance company for a fixed monthly payment for life, or you can choose a program withdrawals receiving periodic payments based on your life expectancy and your account balance, and if these funds can be inherited to your family. For those who haven't saved enough, the state provides a minimum pension to ensure a basic standard of living. There is the Pilar Solidario, Solidarity Pillar, that was introduced in 2008 and helps low-income individuals who haven't accumulated sufficient savings. This pillar is relatively small. And in 2022, a universal guaranteed pension was introduced, the PGU, for name in Spanish, that benefits all people over 65 years of age who belong to the most vulnerable 90%. So it's pretty big. Both of these benefits, the Pilar Solidario and the PGU, are financed by general taxes, are not part of the contribution. And I would say those are the main aspects of our system.
Right. Thanks. Thanks for that great summary. Now, and Enrico, what do you think are the main challenges that we are facing right now in this matter?
Okay, a little parenthesis first. I have to disclose our relationship with Joo Hee. So I met Joo Hee at Cambridge. I was her student, so I'm very grateful that she's here. And after that, she took me under her wing for 4 years. So I worked with her at Cambridge and UCL. So if I know anything about quantitative finance, it's thanks to Joo Hee. And actually, we met talking about the Chilean pension system. So when she saw that I was Chilean, she started asking. And then I discovered that she actually had been in Chile before and presenting about pensions. So a lot of our conversations have been around the pension system around the world and how investment and finance professionals can help this social problem. And I think it is something great to think as a finance professional because it's a way for us to contribute to society directly. So having said that, as Igal mentioned, we were kind of pioneers in Chile in implementing this private account system. And currently, we all know that we are trying to reform our system because it haven't met the expectations. And currently, the discussion is, it's heavily ideologized. I don't know how to say it properly in English, but it's run by ideology. So we have all these conversations of who should administrate the extra contribution, whether it should be a state-run pension system or we should give it to the private system that we already have. But we are not covering, or we are thinking less on the investment aspects of the problem. And that's where I want to focus the conversation, right? In the investment aspects and not in the ideology aspect. Looking at the investment aspects, there are a bunch of problems. For example, as Igal mentioned, there are funds that are investing in abroad. So we have a hedging problem there that we need to think about. The fact that the system has got different options and it is mandatory to contribute when you are a formal worker in the labor market. So you are forced to save, but you are free to choose between these funds without having the knowledge maybe to what's best for you. So even the simplest form of life cycle is left to the pensioner to choose. And those decisions, in my opinion, should be taken by investment professionals and not by people that know little about investments or finance. I would say that the main problem right now is the focus of the conversations. I would like to see more discussion around the investment regime that we are going to follow in the future, much more than ideology. So there are some investment innovations or things that have been tried in other pension systems that we know work, but we are not concentrating on those kind of things.
You made several interesting points, right? So I return to you, Joo Hee, and what do you think are the main points that regulators and those who are participating in this industry should incorporate in this discussion?
So the very first thing I'd like to mention is that 10 years ago when I was in Chile, I didn't really understand at that time that the savers, pensioners can actually move between the funds so freely. So now I know the first thing I suggest to regulators or even states should look into making it difficult for savers to move investments around. Nico pointed out investment itself probably should be left with investment professionals if it's probably best done that way. And that's why other countries, including US and UK, there is something called the default solution. Of course, one size never fits everybody, but default solution means it is overall deemed as safest solution for many people. And of course, if you have strong opinion or knowledge or experience, you can choose something else, but that should be made a little bit more difficult. And other things, to me, taking emotion away from investment is really hard to achieve. And that's why another thing we could think of doing is making the enrollment itself. I know in Chile, it is compulsory and then you have to do 10%. But other countries' experiences, they sometimes try not to invest because maybe they lose trust in investment in a pension system. But again, making sure savings actually are done. And that's what our regulators can help. Because the most important thing is contribution. So I'm so fond of our Chilean system, making sure the 10% gets invested and saved away is wonderful. And other things I might actually add is employers make sure that these investments get facilitated. Leaving so many things to individuals could actually result in some unnecessary complications. Other countries experience, and UK in particular, it's all invested gross of taxes. So that means that your savings get compounded faster, tax deferred. But when you retire, your income would more likely shrink a little bit because, of course, you are not actively earning. And then your tax benefit would actually pass through to the retirement periods. That sort of regulation, if that can be possible, that's what our regulators can help.
A question, more specifically, when you say make it more difficult for people to make decisions, which I totally agree, because upfront, you're assuming that people is not rational enough to manage their savings for their audit. So there is an assumption there upfront. And then when you tell them, okay, but you're rational enough to decide how to invest your money, probably many people don't want to really have this freedom. The same way you are not free to choose what kind of water comes out of your tap water, whether it's more cleaner or not. You don't want that kind of, because you're not an expert, but if you are given the choice, probably you will take it. So how do you implement that? Maybe you have to fill a form to make a declaration that if you're not an expert, really, we just don't give you the choice, or you can give it to anyone who requests. Really, how countries manage when they do have a choice, how people are able to choose?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Restricting it sounds like I'm suggesting that we should restrict people's choice and liberty. However, it's their money and they should be able to do whatever they want to do with it. So when I say let's make it difficult, I'm suggesting to take benefits away. For instance, if you change, then you have to redeem the funds and then reinvest. Then when you redeem the funds, you have to pay the deferred taxes right up front in order to reinvest. So you are losing tax benefits there. So this is a kind of thing implied in changing the investment. Going back to what Chile has, and again, as I said, I'm a big fan of Chilean pension system and my mind has never changed. But one thing that I noticed 10 years ago was that I thought the cohorts would move from A to E as you approach your retirement age. This has to be with the shortening of the investment horizon with age. In other words, with the reinvestment coming closer, the investment horizon becomes shorter. That's actually how I would recommend people to invest. But then when you move investments from A to B, or starting from C or even E, that could be actually made a little bit more formula-based so that the man in the street does not have to make the decision themselves. Even for myself, I actually invest in a default solution. The reason is not because I don't know much about investment. It is because it takes a lot of work, thinking, and you are busy with your day job and you're not going to think about moving your investments. And when doing that, then emotion may come in, when possibly the market isn't doing very well, for instance. And then it's precisely the wrong time to disinvest. This is why pension management should best be left with dedicated professionals and invested in a default solution. Life cycle investing is a great default solution to which an investor may simply contribute regularly until his retirement. Within the solution, investment horizon related de-risking is done systematically and emotionlessly. That's why I'm a big fan of life cycle investing. The Chilean pension system can work just like a life cycle investment if the implementation is done automatically and the investors are not allowed to switch funds. Life cycle investing is implemented entirely automatically. For instance, one can actually buy one fund that is catered for a particular age cohort to retire at a particular retirement time. Let's say 65 years old or 70, depending on the country. It'll reduce risk in such a way that it'll move A to E in a very, very controlled way. And that one does not have to even change the investment scheme because the system itself will change the allocation for one. When it comes to implementation, there are different methods and pros and cons. But the bottom line is that once you invest in your pension, the de-risking is age-dependent and directly related to the specific time horizon, so that the investment horizon is taken care of for you. That is the solution that I would wholeheartedly recommend to any country.
Joo Hee, also in some of our previous conversations, you mentioned that you participated in the creation of a private pension scheme, and then the young generations, the recommendation was to invest in bonds, which is counterintuitive. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I like those counterintuitive solutions, right?
That's a wonderful example. Of course, investing, as we all know, is important, but it's the contribution that makes the whole thing different. But then contribution should become a bit of a habit. In other words, a habitual saving. This is the case with some national levels of pension schemes where they really like the idea of life cycle investing because they want to make sure that our investments are safely guarded. What they didn't like, and which I learned a great deal about, is that some of the cohorts, or actually many of us, are not really used to having a lot of your income taken away because it seems like you're losing money somewhere. But then in your account, if you see that money is actually safely saved and it's growing a little bit as well, then it can become a bit of a habit. And then you start switching off and just continue saving regularly. So they decided that about 5 to 10 years at the beginning is a good time for them to build that habit. During that initial habit building period, the default portfolio looks very conservative, invested in a low risk bearing assets, and savings becomes second nature so that you know that 10% or X% of your income is actually being saved away. After such a period, the portfolio is rebalanced to riskier allocation with a higher growth potential. From an investor's point of view, initially I thought we are wasting 5 to 10 years of your investment growth opportunity at a young age. When you are young and a long way from a retirement, you can afford to take investment risk in anticipation of potential rewards. So it is slightly counterintuitive to start conservative and then move to aggressive. But again, if you think twice about it, what happens is that these are the people who are young, so their income is not as large as they as when you are at the peak of your earning capability. So that time, when your asset is small, you're basically paying for building your good habit. So I thought it was such a brilliant modification of a standard life cycle solution. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Great. And you mentioned the life cycles strategy for investment, right? You made several points about that. But to help our listeners to understand in a better way, could you elaborate, please, more about some details about the life cycle investment strategy and what would be the focus to the regulators to promote in the best way possible to do that kind of a strategy for investment?
Life cycle investing is actually really simple if you think of it. So when you are younger, you have much longer time horizon. Investment comes with risk, of course. If the risk period hits and there is a recovery, that's going to come and you can actually see the recovery through. But if your investment horizon is 2 to 3 years and you are about to retire to use that time savings, and then I'm suggesting that you are putting 100% your capital into equity, then I'm not being prudent as an investor. What that means is things could go really well, and then you can double your assets in this next 2 to 3 years. But chances are you can actually lose 50% of your assets as well. And now the growth is actually at the mercy of the market. If you lose your assets, but I believe that will recover, you are not going to be able to see the recovery clearly. So the recovery time should be embedded in your life cycle investing. So going back to life cycle investing, the fundamental is very simple. You are 25 years old, and then you are putting 100 pesos in your pension contribution. That 100 pesos, it will have to be treated differently if you are investing in 2 years before your retirement. So every 100 pesos you are investing should be treated differently. And that is differently in such a way that you need to invest at the risk-adjusted way. So the probability for you to see that 100 peso at your retirement should be maximized. That's how the life cycle investment works. Again, going back to the current system in Chile, one can easily plug in the building blocks to your life cycle in the order of A to E with approaching retirement. I advise that the switches between the funds should be pre-programmed and facilitated by an investment services manager, and remove the liberty of switching the funds from savers altogether so that unnecessary transactions and short-term performance chasing investment activities are minimized. Then it becomes life cycle investing.
And I'm not sure if you just mentioned that in terms of the regulators, what do you think will be the most important thing that the regulator should do here in Chile to enhance that kind of investment?
Yes, so making sure that people really do follow the contribution guideline. So minimum contribution will always be made. That's something regulators can do. And also, again, the restriction of moving assets around, that's what regulators can do. And it's beyond the regulators' ability, but I like to see that employers' contribution can be made a little bit more, it should become a bit more normal because it's a private pension, I understand. It's a working life investment solution, and your employer should have some responsibility to share and then increase the contribution. And again, if there is not much tax benefit available in Chile, maybe giving savers a bit more tax benefit could be something I would wish for. And I have some other a bit more radical wishes as well. Maybe I should save it for later.
Mauricio, sorry, so this really depends on we trusting the specialists, the people that really know about investment, that these guys, instead of managing a fund that is always the same and is defined by risk, is defined by risk/horizon, and they will move your asset. So the fund is a cohort fund, and the specialist will reinvest according to the age of the cohort, in a way, how far they are from. So that's what I understand. And the regulator has to give some guidance on the risk taking or the type of assets that each cohort fund invest, or this you will leave to competition, free market. So the question is whether the regulator participates of the investment decisions. That is entirely left to the market.
I think it should be left with combined parties. I don't believe regulators should be making investment decisions, but I believe regulators should facilitate creating right default solutions. And another point I should mention here is fee discussion, because long-term investment means fees also compounding. And here regulators can help managing the fees. If investment providers have two different fairly comparable investment schemes, regulators come in and help managing the fees effectively. Again, employers may choose some less beneficial looking default solution. Again, regulators can help choose a better default solution. It is difficult because it's where the specialty lies. But I think the best solution is always respecting experts' view and then gaining the best advice from each and try to make best combined solution. I guess that's where state intervention can come in, and the regulators can help. And bringing some of the national level of insurance or pension protection, that's something regulators can do. And taking this opportunity, I like to say one of my wishes is to see some kind of minimum guarantee that could be facilitated by government, and the regulators can reinforce that to give savers and retirees some more comfort. And that could come in at some cost. That cost can be facilitated by foregoing some upside potential. Some investments could do really exceptionally well, and you can actually take some upside potential and reinvest it into pension protection, for instance, so that although this is defined contribution and the outcome depends on your individual luck, it could be a little bit more from social aspect. Enrico's made it really clear at the beginning. We don't want to make it some kind of ideology-driven case. However, pension is still a lot to do with social responsibility. So it's a kind of sharing social responsibility.
I just wanted to make a point, because what Igal was mentioning was about competition, right? That's one of the challenges, because currently we have this auto benchmark imposed by the regulator, where the average of the system is the benchmark of the system. You have some big players taking the lead and some followers. There is a restriction to incentivize competition when you have a benchmark that is the average of the system.
Yeah, I think that's a very uniquely Chilean case. So average cannot possibly be the fairest benchmark. And if we don't have fairest benchmark, it actually hurts investors' benefits. Investors will take the risk on their books in a way. And what could be the best benchmark? It's basically fair competition should be the benchmark and not the average. Because if the fair competition is encouraged, then your benchmark actually goes up.
Joo Hee, regarding what Enrico said about promoting competition and promoting life cycle solutions, how can those recommendations deepen the financial market and especially the fixed income market? What I mean is how society as a whole can benefit from a deeper financial system that is a consequence of a better pension system.
So if we start investing in a life cycle solution, one of the big benefits coming out of it is that we don't have to rely on very long end of fixed income instruments. Because actually, very long bonds are much riskier than shorter end bonds, just by definition. And long end bonds have been really popular up to the point that there is a lot of supply and demand issues coming in. And then the price goes up. That means yield compression and becomes very expensive. The reason why long bonds were in demand is that in defined benefit pension management, there is this notion of asset and liability matching. In life cycle investing, however, bonds are typically for defensive playing, protection at the very lower end of the volatility type of investment. And that means, of course, for shorter investment horizons, bonds can come in as safe types of investment. So that will make a fixed income market a lot healthier in such a way that the longer end of the bonds will have specialty demands and remain important, but they wouldn't be so much in demand to flatten the yield curve as being part of the liability-driven investment system as before. So that's something which will self-correct itself. However, the Chilean bond market is wonderfully liquid. And as far as I know, the whole yield curve is well populated. In terms of supply, there is enough liquidity. And I think that this is a wonderful market that will be so necessary for life cycle investing in general and multi-asset investing in particular. We need that kind of bond market. However, when it comes to equity market, as far as I can understand the equity market in Chile, your international investing is a little bit limited. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So when international investment is restricted, you're losing quite a lot of investment universe because the Chilean equity market is minute. That's the reality. And then we are missing out on quite a lot of equity market exposure. So I think that opening up international investing in the pension management is definitely beneficial. However, when it comes to investing in equity market abroad, currency hedging can actually lose the benefits in quite a substantial way on two grounds. One is the inability for anybody to really hedge currency perfectly in an equity market because of the volatility. And the price of it is quite substantial. However, the last bit that I wanted to add today is also that you may actually lose the opportunity of gaining currency-related investment outcome as well. So for all these reasons, I think that opening up international investing has to come with any relaxation of hedging requirements together.
Right. And to close this conversation, my last question is, in Chile, pension fund members have daily updates on their fund returns, right? They can see that on a daily basis, which can have, and you mentioned that, a big impact on them emotionally, right? Lead them to take bad decisions in terms of how to invest. And this is particularly true during recession or crisis, right? Some of our clients that have expressed their concerns that this might lead to people to make poor investment decisions, affecting, of course, their long-term prospects for their pensions. In that sense, from your experience, how do you think this aspect should be handled? For example, should regulators consider reducing the frequency with which this information is provided to contributors?
In the UK, this pension account, the balance made available on a monthly basis. And if you wanted to see it, I believe I have never tried. I believe you can actually see it at any time. Now, on a monthly basis, what kind of value that you have in your pension account and what has happened. And another thing is what kind of value you can expect in certain time, typically your expected retirement day. So I think providing information and full transparency, it's just something I couldn't encourage more. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to encourage people to move the assets or get out of investment. That's not the reason. I think being aware of what you have, and again, being aware of the most likely outcome of your investment is actually a very important thing, because then you can be prepared for shortfalls maybe, because typically we are not saving as much as we should be. So I think it's relatively reasonable to assume that your pension pot is not going to be completely sufficient for you to rely on after your retirement. So being aware of where you are is very important. However, it shouldn't be a way to discourage people from investing further or encouraging people to move assets around. And that is why we discussed earlier, regulation should help making it more difficult. People are all very emotional. And if we don't believe that that's going to recover, then we'll have some friction coming with that. So that's why the information to describe why this might have happened and why investment professionals think it is still reasonable for these assets to recover. And then with further contribution, you can end up having X amount of assets when you retire. That information should be given. And then also we can give additional information, what other things, what related to that kind of event might have resulted in the past, but then what happened afterwards, so that we build trust the retirees, so that they don't feel the stress on a daily basis.
I have a follow-up question that comes back to a question I made before. What happens if your fund does very poorly or even deeply negative just before you're about to pension? It's just bad luck and that's it? You choose the wrong fund, or there is a way to recover that, or the fund is forced to invest in insurance, the pension insurance at the end of the life cycle, or how you manage that?
Yes, that really depends on the investment scheme you put your assets in. So my previous experience and what I always try to convince people is, at the end of the day, establish fixed market, shorter end of fixed income instruments shouldn't lose the value overnight. So however boring it might be, however little return you might be getting, moving into those assets will protect your notional savings. But we should remember that right before your retirement, you would have already accumulated a lot of assets, and protection is the most important thing. So one shouldn't even be thinking of keeping those assets in risky enough instruments, which would potentially lose a substantial amount of your savings. So that would be my answer. Bad luck could happen, but that kind of bad luck can be prevented to a large degree. And that's where my suggestion earlier, minimum guarantee can actually come in. If we did all the things happen and Chilean bond market, let's say, had serious issues, I don't see why it should. Because again, right before your retirement, what I would do is I would do very short duration bonds. And even if there is serious turmoil, there is a limited downside. But let's say something happened, that's where minimum guarantee can come in. And again, I think you are fully entitled to get that protection, because again, if I just reemphasize my point earlier, that insurance, if you like, embedded insurance, is paid by some of your upsides that you actually put away. So I think you're fully entitled to expect that. This is basically what we say here, belt and braces. So you have the belt, and then you have also braces, and then you have a very low risk, boring investment that you safeguard right before your retirement. And also you have the insurance that minimum guarantee comes in. Okay.
I would just add to what just Yuhi said, and it's also something we discussed, because what she's saying should be part of the conversation, first of all. But that's a technical conversation, because it sounds, when Yuhi explains, it sounds very easy. But when it comes to the day-to-day management of pension, it has some very technical implications, right? The way we optimize the portfolios. So whether we are optimizing, it's different when we optimize for the young generation than when we optimize for someone that it's about to retire. And that becomes, when you start digging, it becomes really technical, because you are talking about taking care of the drawdown of the investment at some points much more than at some other points. So if you have much more time to recover, then you shouldn't care much about the drawdown. But when you're about to retire, then you should be optimizing an objective function that would limit the drawdown as far as we can, right? And that's what I was trying to say at the beginning, that these are also very important things that we have an opportunity to fix in this moment, and we are not saying anything about it. So I hope this conversation hopefully brings some of these topics to the agenda of the legislators, and we see some investment regime conversations also in the discussion in the parliament.
I would love to see that happen. And just to add that, the wonderful thing about life cycle is once it's taken care by the higher authority, you can elongate the life cycle to perpetuity. Okay, annuity is expensive, but it comes with a lifelong guarantee. You might die 80, but you can live 120 years, 150 years, doesn't matter. You would get annuity income. The reason is because it is collectively created. So within the annuity system, the longevity risk is basically diversified away. And you can do it. You can do this kind of thing at the state level, and you can bring the retirement part of the life cycle, savings part of your life cycle, and then make it longer. Then you can spread your risk much better, and these risks will be better diversified because there is a time diversification. So one thing I would add to that is one of the hardest problems, which we actually haven't discussed here, and even other countries only begin to address, is how you get your retirement income out of your saved assets. And the reason why this is important, but it's been overlooked, is because this kind of defined contribution system is a relatively young type of pension. So I know, Igal, you said in Chile, when you retire, you have a programmed withdrawal, or you can do annuity. So these are all good. But in between your saved assets to these schemes, there is something completely hidden, which is complete redemption. And then you get the cash, and then you reinvest in either your program withdrawal or annuity. From investment standpoint, that's a transaction cost done for nothing, number one. And that is where market timing comes in, which goes back to the point about, am I just so unlucky, right? Or am I so lucky? So the same amount of capital that you might have accumulated, when you redeem, something could happen and that you might actually lose. But of course, we would be protecting as much as possible, but still you have a lot of variation in getting that. Bringing your retirement all the way to fixed income is protection. However, the best long-term retirement income fund may be better to have some 20% of equity, high dividend equity could be quite useful because to retirement, you actually have a really long time to go. So transiting between that, the accumulated capital to your retirement, robust retirement asset allocation should be made a lot more seamlessly.
Than from overnight.
Exactly.
Sure. To me, I think I wish we had more time to continue discussing these topics. It's so interesting and so important. In discussing this way and around these concepts, you can bring so many things into the discussion in a rational way. Intergenerational solidarity between generations. With these cohort funds, you can manage that in a much more rational and reasonable way. The transitions from accumulation to deaccumulation, all of these can be managed much better. And today, this is all absent in the discussion. We're just trying to impose a system that actually goes in the opposite direction of rational investment decisions, bringing the firms into the discussion, into the saving, building habits, everything kinds of built in a rational way. It would be so great to see this kind of discussion, as Enrico said, and you said, maybe in Parliament, even in Parliament, or at least at the technical level. So I'm really, this has been fantastic for me.
And if it gives some kind of, I don't know, thought-provoking or the chance for you to think about different things and options available, learning from other countries' mistakes, I would be really happy. That's a really wonderful thing to share with you. Yeah.
So Joo Hee can give us some hope.
Yeah, totally.
No, I think you are not starting from complete scratch. And you are starting from really, really high level. And you can make it such a wonderful system. And I'm just so honored to be part of this discussion. And you just call me anytime, and then I'll just talk to you more about what I know, what I experience. And I'll be searching more.
We are currently in kind of an inflection point. So I hope we take the right direction, because as we discussed here, it's not only, of course, the main point is pensions, and that's the focus, but it's got all sorts of implications for society, not only pensions, but because as we discussed here, and especially in Chile, the pension system has played a big role in forming a competent or a robust capital market that allows companies and people to get funding. It's got implications on mortgages, on savings, the things that we discussed on how the pension system can contribute to flatten or even invert the yield curve, and the implication, the economical and real economics implications of that can be very costly. And if we think about these things, we can have a more prosperous society in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Now Enrico will run for president.
Yeah.
Or something. Okay.
You have my vote.
I'll stay private forever, so don't worry. You don't want to have me in the public sector.
Oh yeah, and you will have Joo Hee supporting you.
I'm coming to support you.
Yeah, that's great.
No, you should support me to take rational decisions.
I think that the case has been made. It is clear that we have a lot of space to improve our current system, particularly regarding how we invest. And I just remembered that early today we were discussing about the news here in Chile, right? From a well-renowned group of economists that were starting to work to contribute with data to the discussion. And it seems that they lack for one specialist from the private sector investment industry particularly. So if we really think that this is important to get into the discussion, I think that we have to reinforce the point that it is important to have that kind of profile in those groups, right? To get into the discussion, these concepts and these insights that are very interesting. After the tremendous discussion we have today, we are closing this new episode. But first, I would like to thank again Enrico and Igal for joining us and for the interest, reflection, and contribution. So Enrico, Igal, anything you want to say for say goodbye?
Just to thank Joo Hee again for coming, and I hope to have her again here because she's got insight not only in pensions but some other aspects of finance and investment as well. We will love to pick Joo Hee's brain again at some point in the future.
Yeah, and
Anytime.
pleasure, an honor and pleasure.
And finally, of course, especially thanks to Joo Hee for joining us and sharing all her knowledge with us. It was really a pleasure and privilege to have here. Please, anything you would like to say to close?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Chilean pension system, and I think you're really at the right time, right inflection point where you can make it to the next step. And I completely believe you can make it. And I really like to see that happen. And I want Chilean pension system is the world leading pension system. And thank you so much, Amit, having me. It's been real pleasure. Anytime, if you think I could be of help, just give me a ring.
Great. That's awesome. That's all for today. Thank you for your listening. And we will see you in the next episode from Backstage Pacifico.